Welcome to Nater Swim videos, where the sky is the limit but the water is not. Introducing How to Swim as If You're Sleeping by Alex Nater, a unique and novel approach to swimming, now available on all major platforms. Instead of focusing on speed, the techniques in this book focus on leisure, stress-free swimming that can be applied to rough water, such as the surf at the beach. How to swim using the GAS method. This is not the gas method where we eat a lot of beans. It's GAS method, gravity-assisted swimming. Why this GAS swimming technique versus the traditional one? Traditional swimming technique was designed to swim fast, especially for competitions in calm water. GAS swimming technique uses mainly gravity, which requires less stroking force, and therefore is designed for leisure swimming. As a bonus, the GAS swimming method is excellent for swimming in rough waters or even rip currents if we accidentally get caught in them. We'll talk more about this later. Imagine a piece of log floating on a body of water. A rope is tied to that log and stretched out parallel to the water's surface. On the other end is a weight, maybe about 5 pounds. What would happen if we release the weight? The log will move across and the weight drop down. This is the power of gravity. Without any outside downward force, the log can move just with gravity alone using this contraption. We can keep repeating this process and the log will keep moving. In comparison, an average adult human arm weighs about 8 pounds. Assuming the log is the human body, and the weight is the arm, we can produce similar results with the arm if it's attached to the body with a rope. Since our arm swings at the shoulder like a hinged rod, we'll be using the rod to calculate what's the most effective ways to use gravity to our advantage while swimming. We have here as an example a hinged rod on an X and Y axis. The X-axis is the water line, whereas the positive Y-axis is the sky and the negative Y-axis is underwater. The pivot is where the hinged rod rotates around clockwise and represents our shoulder joint. We have length, degree of the rod from the x-axis below the waterline, mass, and gravity acceleration. With all these values we have enough to calculate angular acceleration for the rod when it swings, and similarly, when we swing our arm at the shoulder joint when performing our swim stroke. The formula we'll be using is angular acceleration equals torque net divided by inertia. Torque net equals mass multiplied by gravity acceleration constant multiplied by torque. Torque equals the rod's length divided by 2 multiplied by the cosine of the radian of the angle, since Excel cosine calculates the angle as radian by default. Inertia equals mass multiplied by the rod's length squared divided by 3. After inputting the values into the formulas for 360 degrees at 10-degree intervals, we get this table for angular acceleration calculations. We plot the degree and angular acceleration in Excel. I labeled this chart as return on effort per swim stroke. The x-axis is labeled as stroke angle in degree and shown as orange numbers along the zero angular acceleration line mid-chart, and the y-axis is labeled as angular acceleration radian per second square, with value shown as blue on the left side of the chart. Angular acceleration is also shown as yellow numbers along the line graph for easier analysis. An image is also added to better imagine arm angle placement during swim stroke. We have 360-degree total divided into 4 quadrants, with each having 90 degrees labeled from P1 to P4. P1 to P2 is our normal swim stroke, where we extend our arm forward parallel to the waterline and stroke. P2 to P3 is when our arm is pointing straight down and stroke backward toward our leg. P3 to P4 is stroking from the leg up toward the sky, and it's simply physically impossible to do for most of us. Lastly, P4 to P1 starting from pointing straight up into the sky and stroking straight down toward the water surface, thereby slapping the water. This P4 to P1 is also physically impossible for most of us to do. P2 to P3 is negative angular acceleration because it starts from pointing straight down and stroking toward our leg, thereby fighting against gravity. P3 to P4 is also negative angular acceleration because it starts from the leg and strokes toward the sky, thereby fighting gravity likewise. Since from P2 to P4 are both negatives, we remove them from consideration for optimal swimming stroke. This leaves us with only 2 quadrants left to perform our optimal swim stroke with positive angular acceleration. In order to start at P4 for a swim stroke toward P1, we need to first raise our arm up and pointing it straight toward the sky. Not only is it physically impossible, we need to fight gravity in order to raise our arm up in the first place. On top of that, the stroke is all empty air before reaching the waterline at P1. Raising the arm above water is not optimal for swimming due to fighting gravity and stroking empty air. This leaves us with only 1 quadrant left for optimal swim stroke, which is from P1 to P2. Notice that the angular acceleration is the highest when the arm is parallel to the waterline and pointing straight out at 0 degrees. As the swim stroke progresses closer to P2, which is 90 degrees downward, the angular acceleration became less and less. There is a diminishing return as we stroke closer to P2, which is pointing straight down. In order to perform the most optimal stroke to capitalize on the maximum use of gravity, we need to finish our stroke at around 45 degrees below the waterline. At that point, bring the arm up for the next stroke. Making sense of it all? Knowing the swim stroke's angle is not everything we need in order to take advantage of gravity to assist in our swimming. It's a little more involved than that. There are other forces that act on our swim strokes than gravity alone. After knowing the best angle for swim stroke, how do we actually apply it in practice? First, we need to identify all the forces acting on our arms while swimming. We have gravity acceleration, water's buoyancy, and arms muscle tensions. Actual downward stroke force equals downward stroke force plus gravity acceleration minus water's buoyancy minus arms muscle tensions. Actual upward arm recovery equals the swimmer's arm uplift force minus gravity acceleration plus water's buoyancy minus the arm's muscle tensions. Gravity and water buoyancy we cannot control. One variable force we can control is our arm's muscle tension. The lower the tension, the more gravity can help with our downward stroke, and the more buoyancy can help with our recovery. Our goal is to reduce our arms' muscle tensions by relaxing as much as possible while stroking but also applying downward force. Likewise, we should relax our arm while recovering for the next stroke to utilize the water's buoyancy property. Mastering this technique will not happen overnight and will take practice. Pros and cons of this swimming technique. Cons. This is not a fast swimming technique due to heavily leveraging gravity as a source for our swim stroke. More strokes per minute since the strokes recovered at a 45-degree angle versus the traditional swimming method which stroke beyond that point. Observers might think we're doing something wrong due to not swimming like other swimmers. Pros. If the water turns rough while we're swimming, we can leverage gravity as a swim stroke to efficiently navigate to safety. In case we get pulled out by a rip current, for example, it's great to have another swimming technique under our belt. We can swim for a lot longer. Due to heavily leveraging gravity as a stroke force, our recovery rate can potentially be faster than our expenditure rate. Instead of feeling tired, we feel like we can swim indefinitely assuming we did everything else properly. Faster stroke is more stable in rough waters, especially in a rip current. Traditional swimming method was designed for calm water such as a pool, where we can afford to take time to finish our stroke at more than 45-degree angles. But in rough waters, we're at the mercy of the waves crashing against us. Depending on how fast the water is jostling around us, there's simply no time to complete a normal stroke. Swimming riddle. This swimming riddle is the cornerstone of the GAS swimming technique. If you think you can solve it, please put it in the comment down below. If we want to swim like a fish, think like a fish. If we want to think like a fish, think like a human. How can we think like a fish thereby swimming like them? Disclaimer: GAS swimming technique discussed in this video is for academic purposes only and does not suggest viewers seek out rough waters to swim in. For your safety, please consult with your swimming instructors and lifeguards before going swimming. If you enjoyed this video and feel it's helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe. If there's enough interest, I'll post more videos about the GAS swimming technique in the future.